This is the best time to get into tabletop role-playing games. Or at least, this is what they say. But is that actually true? In this video, I've gathered all the tabletop role-playing games coming out in 2025, so that you don't have to do it yourself. I've read through their websites, their crowdfunding campaigns, their quick starts, and sometimes I even played them at my table. And I did that for no other reason than because I love role-playing games and I really wanted to get a better idea of what is going to happen in 2025 from a role-player's point of view. In doing that, however, I realized that I gained some knowledge that I wanted to share with you guys. If you are already part of this hobby, or if you want to get into it, then you have to know that our interest is a niche hobby. So tabletop role-playing games are not so widespread as we might think, considering the success of games such as Baldur's Gate 3. Our hobby is dominated by one big game, Dungeons & Dragons, which is currently in its 5th edition. This is the game most people know about, but there are a lot of different games that help you in telling different stories than D&D, or even have different rules from D&D, allowing you to experiment with new things and new ideas. This video is all about those games, and I'm going to be focused especially on those that have original systems, by which I mean that I will not be covering as 2025 releases, books that are expansion to existing role-playing games. I will consider new games only new game systems, meaning that, for example, if you have a new D&D adventure, it will not be featured here. Also, keep in mind that gathering all the information I got was not an easy task, because sometimes information can be sparse about role-playing games. If you want to find out which games are currently being developed or which games are going to release this year, this is not an easy task, and this is why I bring you this video. Because when I tried to do that myself, I learned that gathering information alone was a daunting task, because sometimes information are sparse, as I told you, or perhaps even disseminated in different places. For example, websites or crowdfunding campaign pages, or even news websites. Sometimes to learn more about the game, you have to check on their social medias, or even go to their crowdfunding pages and their updates to their backers, so that you know more about how the game is shaping up. So I thought it would be not a useless thing to gather all those information I gathered and bring them to you. If you don't know the channel, I am the Prof Player and it's great to have you on board. This is my first English video, so please be kind to me, because English is not my native language and sometimes I may have, and I'm sure I have, misspelled some terms. For example, you will notice that, according to me, a lot of bakers were interested in tabletop role-playing games this year, apparently. They were actually backers, as I learned later, but you know, this is what happens when you record a video not in your native language. Anyway, rest assured that I double-checked my information and my video, so everything you will find here is correct, apart from my pronunciation. One thing I want you to know is that no one paid in any way for this video. I did it for the sole purpose of broadening my knowledge of tabletop RPGs. I've tried to be as objective and neutral as I can, but of course I have my own preferences and interests, as you can see in my top 10 and top 20 list. I tend to prefer fantasy over sci-fi for personal tastes, and I really like Lovecraftian aura, so you can understand me being a bit more hyped about those kind of games. That doesn't mean that I do not appreciate other games. In fact, while doing this research, I've learned and wanted to try some new games in other themes which I didn't even know about. But I want to make clear that sometimes my love for an intellectual property or a setting will get the best of me, and I have devoted most of my interest to those games. If you don't want to follow me on the whole 2-hour-long journey, I understand you. In that case, you can use the timestamps down below to skip exactly to the game you want to learn more about. And you will find statistics and graphs about general trends in the industry at the end of the video. Those final considerations and statistics are what I learned from my inquiry. So if you're interested in where this industry is going, you may find it useful. My list includes more than 50 new tabletop role-playing games, but I wasn't able to put all of them in here. I had to use some criteria. For example, I only considered English language games. Also, this is not by any means a complete or total list of all and every game that is coming out this year. It's just the most widely known games, the ones I was able to learn about. I tried to put in the list even smaller games, not just bigger projects, but it's well possible that some games have eluded my inquiries. If that's the case and I neglected a very important game for you, please let me know in the comments down below. Also, for your own commodity, I've compiled a scroll of links, by which I mean a list for every quick start available for the games I have listed in my video. When I say you can find this information in the scroll of links down below, I mean to check the video's description. But without further ado, since this video is long enough I think, let's jump straight into our list. Let's get started with one of my personal most anticipated tabletop role-playing games in the list. The 13th Age 2nd edition from Pelgrane Press, a publisher that will be quite busy this year. The authors are Rob Ainsworth and Jonathan Twitt, both prominent names in the industry, with substantial resumes behind them. Twitt was the lead designer of the 3rd edition of D&D, and he worked together with Ainsworth on the ill-fated Dungeons & Dragons miniature game Experiment. Ainsworth, on the other hand, is remembered for his many contributions to the history of the Forgotten Realms, and especially for his role as lead designer of the controversial 4th edition of D&D. In short, we're talking about two renowned authors with a definite game design philosophy behind them. The 13th Age 2nd edition is the new iteration of a much-loved fantasy RPG, based on a classic D20 system but with many substantial differences from D&D and Pathfinder, the two dragons of the industry. Thanks to the icon connection system, the 13th Age succeeds in creating an emergent narrative, similar to what a Powered by Apocalypse game does, and the escalation die, a die that causes attacks to become increasingly deadly as the round progresses, makes combat faster and even more epic. The goal of this edition is to mix story and action, in a mix enhanced by impactful choices. Every decision will be a strategic puzzle thanks to the classes, feats, spells and other options that have been fully redesigned compared to the 1st edition, to prevent players from always choosing the same options over and over again, because some of them were significantly more effective than others. The 13th Age was a game full of trap options, that is, fate, spells and class choices that were distinctly suboptimal, especially when compared with others that were particularly effective. And to make sure that GMs also get their slice of fun, the monsters have been reworked, making them more unpredictable and thus fun to use. The authors insisted on the differentiation between characters as a trademark of the 13th Age. It will be achieved through one unique thing that will be assigned to each character, which will distinguish them from any other creatable character, and also through an enriched relationship system, so as to be more dynamic and impactful, further developing the icon connection mechanic typical of the system. You can imagine it as something similar to the connection between Greek heroes and the Olympian gods, but here the gods are the Emperor, the Elven Queen, the Golden Dragon, and so on. The 2nd edition of the 13th Age will be fully backward compatible with the 1st and will consist of a hero's handbook and a game master guide, in which monsters will also be included. The project was funded through a £300,000 Kickstarter and 3,287 backers and should release in August 2025 for backers. This is a game I recommend keeping an eye on, especially for fantasy and D&D lovers. If you like D&D but you find it too simplistic or have simply played it too much and Pathfinder seems too crunchy to you, the 13th Age might be just the game for you. The artwork has a somewhat retro flavor that some will like, but it's certainly not at the top of what RPG art can achieve, and even the layout seemed a little bit dated to me. But let's wait for the release before judging. You can download a quick start from the scroll of links down below. Do you know that there exists a Call of Cthulhu game set in medieval Iceland? It is called Mythic Iceland and its last edition dates back to 2012. Chaosium recently announced another Viking-themed project set in medieval Iceland, powered by the in-house basic role-playing universal game engine. We know very little about this project, but if I am not terribly wrong, this game is going to be separated from any Lovecraftian theme whatsoever. It's a game where you play Vikings in Middle Ages Iceland. And as an historian specializing exactly in that place and age, let me say that those lands are ripe for storytelling, as some TTRPGs authors guessed already. Take sagas of the Icelanders, for example. But there will always be some interest around Norse folklore. The author is the same Pedro Ziviani from Mythic Iceland, and the subtitle tells us that this game will allow you to adventure in an Iceland of myth and legend. We simply know too little at the moment, but the game has been announced for 2025, so it won't be long before we get to learn more about it. Personally, I am very interested in this project because I like the system and I love the setting, so I really hope it turns out to be a great game. We continue with Alien Evolved Edition, which is nothing but a revised and correct version of the beloved Alien role-playing game created by Free League. This project will be funded through a Kickstarter that has not yet started and whose results may not even be available in 2025. Therefore, we have little information about this RPG, other than that it will include an updated and expanded core rulebook, a revised starter set, a scenario, complete with a special box set called Rapture Protocol, and a miniature set. All of this will be compatible with the first edition, and it will be possible to play the expansions for the new edition, even using the rules from the first edition. The original game came out only 5 years ago, which is why I can see a wave of criticisms against Free League from those who claim it publishes too many books. But the authors have remarked how the numerous feedbacks they have received over time make this re-release anything but unnecessary. The idea I got is that Free League wants to bring Alien up to speed with some of its other recently released RPGs, such as Dragonbane and Blade Runner, by offering a complete package of handouts, reference cards, pre-generated characters, custom dice, abbreviated rules, and a custom miniature set, as well as a scenario that in some respects reminds me a lot of Blade Runner Case File 01 in terms of the amount of materials promised. But let's turn to a much smaller, though no less promising, project, Archeterica Imago, The Invitation, a £13,000 Kickstarter-funded project with 374 backers. This game by Ukrainian team The Imago Cult is described as genteel conspiracy role-playing game, and is set in a 19th century filled with secret societies plotting in the shadows. In reality, the game takes place in an alternate Napoleonic era and is based on a 2d6 classless system, focused on character development and the activities of secret organizations. Among the most interesting features of the game is the fact that players can personally compose the building blocks of a character, such as narrative attributes, feats, and burdens. Combat uses a dynamic initiative system and is embellished with an arsenal of historically accurate guns and swords. Nonetheless, there will also be otherworldly elements related to the world of the occult, something that somehow reminds me of Lex Occultum, a game by the now defunct Riot Minds, which I translated into Italian. A game with the most interesting setting, but burdened by poorly flowing mechanics. Who knows if this Archeterica Imago will do better. The ties to games like Call of Cthulhu and Vaesen are clear, at least in my mind, and in so many places, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. I found the layout to be very inspired, and the artwork has a very recognizable flavor. This is by no means a huge project, but it could be a nice surprise. In particular, the invitation is designed as a starter set containing introductory rules and 3 ready-to-play scenarios. The packaging is very eye-catching, and I hope the content is no less. You can find a quick start guide in the scroll of links down below. Let us move to a decidedly different kind of project. The definitive edition of Ars Magica has raised $841,000 in its Kickstarter campaign from 5,000 backers. We're talking about a new edition of an old but long-established, award-winning game, whose basic idea is that of a medieval Europe in which all superstitions are true. Goblins drink milk left on doorsteps, demons roam in the countryside in search of souls, and holy relics perform miracles. Also typical of Ars Magica is its magic system, which is flexible and not based on the Venetian magic system like D&D and Pathfinder. No preparing or memorizing spells here. In Ars Magica, the only limitation of magic is the player's imagination. With troop-style play, a player can choose the most suitable character for each quest, with a character roster concept that is also common in board games today, such as in Descent. The project is not intended to revolutionize the game system, but rather to serve as a deluxe release, with a leatherette book with more than 600 full-color pages, a story guide screen, handy reference booklet, and a charming poster map. Ashes Without Number is another fairly successful project, with nearly 4,000 backers and almost $250,000 raised. Created by Kevin Crawford, the authors of Stars Without Numbers and other OSR-style games, Ashes Without Numbers is expected to be released in November 2025 for the US market only. The Without Numbers series has various declinations: fantasy with words without numbers, sci-fi with stars without numbers, even cyberpunk with cities without number. The game is based on a simple idea. The world is ending, whether by civil collapse, global epidemic, alien invasion, zombie apocalypse, or nuclear disaster, the end is near. The book offers numerous possibilities, but also gives the GM the freedom to create their own personal apocalypse. The system, as anticipated, is based on the old-school Renaissance and is built on a classic framework of 6 attributes, hit points, saving throws, and other elements you are used to in traditional role-playing games. To these, the game adds subsystems specific to distinctive elements of the apocalyptic settings, such as disease, traumatic stress, lingering wounds, starvation, mutations, equipment built from scraps, and old technologies. These are modular additions. The game master can choose based on their personal spin on the end of the world. To top this off, we have tables and other sources of inspiration for generating adventures, ruins, survivor enclaves, looming crises, and mutant creatures that are designed to be system neutral and therefore usable in any role-playing game you like, which makes this product all the more appealing. It is the epitome of content that is made to be used, not to be read, and for that, in my opinion, it deserves a special praise. These books are first and foremost resources, which is so important in an ever-expanding TTRPG landscape. Astroprisma is another small but ambitious game, a solo sci-fi set in a retrofuturistic universe and focused on space exploration and conflicts between factions. Created by Spanish team Crescent Chimera, this project has garnered nearly 400,000 euros in funding from its 7,000 backers, and is an important indicator of a now discernible trend in the RPG industry, that of solo games. From the solo adventures from Call of Cthulhu to the solo versions now regularly included in Free League's games, more and more people seem to be interested in a solo RPG experience. This game is designed explicitly with solo play in mind, and I'm eager to see where this will lead. Astroprisma has a very attractive layout and art that perfectly evokes the retro-futuristic feel with distinguishable cyberpunk hints of this production. It was supposed to be released in 2024, but it has been delayed a bit and should arrive in 2025. The player's goal is to explore the entire solar system map, in what is basically a hexcrawl. It is an exploration system based on areas delimited by hexagons. In some respects, for example with regards to planets, this is a procedural system, so replayability is expected to be very high. Combat, exploration, and narrative events are the 3 pillars of the game, which does not shy away from tactical and build choices, unlike many solo games that tend toward pure narrative instead. Typical of the genre, however, is the significant impact of player choices. The project consists of a core book, in both physical and digital versions, and expansions made in pamphlet form that we have already become familiar with in products such as CBR plus P&K. This is a project that appeals to me quite a bit for a mix of curiosity about the next frontier of solo gaming and catchy aesthetics, so I will probably give it a thorough look once it comes out. Let us now turn our attention to a much smaller project, At the Gates by Onyx Path. The Kickstarter raised $70,000 for a total of 1,200 backers. The game itself is very reminiscent of Fabula Ultima, a high fantasy TTRPG inspired by JRPGs like Final Fantasy. Magic is as ubiquitous as intrigue and ancient mysteries, and in short, this is nothing unprecedented. The art is very peculiar, but personally does not meet my taste, not to mention that it really seems to mimic Fabula Ultima. The layout, on the other hand, convinced me. Players take on the role of heroes who must save the world from demons emerging from the void after one of the 7 nations of Gaia, the worlds of At the Gates, dangerously summon them. The core rulebook contains an explanation of the system, called Storypath Ultra, details about the setting, called Everend, and the political conflicts within it, as well as 5 available professions and rules for creating characters, managing the game, and the monsters that characters will fight, most of which come from the void. As for the system, it starts from the idea of rolling the dice only when really necessary, and that is when the character's actions have certain chance of failing or taking the story in a different direction. First of all, one rolls a pool of d10s dice ranging from 1 to 10.
Every 8 or more is a success, while a 10 is a double success. In some cases, you add enhancements, which are added to the dice rolled and depend on the character's abilities. Enhancements are not dice, but additional successes, which are counted, however, only if you have achieved at least one success with your dice pool. If the character gets a number of successes equal to or greater than the difficulty, they succeed, although in some cases there may be complications, another mechanic known from other RPGs. And if extra hits were obtained, they can be used to ignore complications or to obtain tricks that allow the characters to do more than they originally intended. 1 or 2 successes, or hits as they are called, result in a disaster and generate 1 momentum. Again, 2d20 system vibes here are very strong. 2 hits is a hit with a complication, 3 hits is an uncomplicated hit, and 4 to 6 hits is a hit with additional trick. The system is a bit of a mishmash of many familiar mechanics, but it is still interesting. The themes aren't also groundbreakingly new, so we'll see how this fares against its direct competitors. You can find a free outline of the Story Path Ultra in the scroll of links down below. With Blood and Doom from the Dutch team Dice Tale Games, we move into a very different territory. This is a dark fantasy TTRPG with a distinctive Conan flavor, but somehow World of Darkness spiced. It raised 150,000 euros from its 1,200 backers in a Kickstarter that ended in 2023. Backers have been waiting for it for a while, and a quick start preview has been available since November 2024. Will 2025 be the year for this game? Blood and Doom is set in the world of Aether, where 12 dark cults spread their corruption hidden in sands, chokes, tombs, and secret layers. As the world nears its bloody end, PCs are the heroes who will try to save it. The author team includes people who have worked on the role-playing games RuneQuest, Dune, Star Trek, Conan, and The One Ring. The game uses a D10-based dice pool system, focused on delivering an adrenaline-fueled, fast-paced cinematic experience while doing justice to the raw, grim-dark feel from which it is inspired. I really like the artwork for this game, and the layout is very well curated. This is a game that really surprised me for its quality, also compared to the money that it raised. I suggest you keep an eye on it because it can be one of the surprises of this year. If you're interested, you can find a 1500 plus page primer bundle on DriveThruRPG, thanks to which you can get a feel for this system. You can find it in the scroll of links down below. I read it and I found it inspiring and very well written, though not very original. The system is neither too crunchy nor too streamlined and reminded me a lot of World of Darkness games such as Vampires, Werewolves and others. The setting is well outlined, although again not particularly original, but it did turn me off a bit for the presence of aliens, which clashes a bit with how I personally envision dark fantasy, but that is an entirely subjective opinion, and that's what makes this game original, so you can go with it. In short, it's a game that doesn't do anything dramatically new, but manages to hit that sweet spot of simplicity and complexity that is always a key aspect of a tabletop RPG. The game will be distributed by Modiphius, and the Kickstarter includes a core rulebook, not just one but 2 guides to the setting, focusing respectively on the areas of the world and its cults, and a number of tasty accessories, from the classic poster map to the equally canonical Doomsayer screen, from an official adventure to a custom dice set, from 3 sets of cards for weapons, conditions, afflictions, wounds, traumas, magical items and poisons, to a group of 18 quality miniatures representing the most iconic monsters of the setting, as well as the game's 9 classes. There's also planned an original soundtrack, support for Roll20, solo adventures and a softcover add-on on Aether's orders and factions. In short, this is a very ambitious project that I'm very curious to see how it will shape up. Let's move on to something decidedly different. Blue Planet Recontact is an updated version of a pre-existing sci-fi TTRPG, now in its 3rd edition and set on the watery world of Poseidon. It raised 125,000 euros with its Kickstarter and is expected to be printed this year, based on what author Biohazard Games revealed in the January 1st, 2025 update. The premise is that humanity has moved to a distant water world, where political disagreements and a hostile alien ecology threaten the survival of the colonists. It reminds me a little bit of Blade Runner with some Avatar elements, but also of the TV series The Expanse, between cybernetic dolphins, space cowboys, and a setting that resembles a tropical paradise. but inhabited by aliens. The project includes 2 full-color volumes, a player's guide and a moderator's guide. The quick start guide is already available and you can find it in the scroll of links down below. I took a look at its 80 pages, overflowing with text and virtually devoid of artwork, save for a couple of exceptions. The system is quite original and unfortunately explaining it here will take me too far. Keep in mind that the setting has a very passionate, if niche, fan base, while the system has had very little success. The hope is that this new edition will solve the system's old problems and bring us a game that is also fun to play as well as to read. Let's turn now to a very small project, but one that nonetheless fascinates me. It is not a new RPG system because it is based on 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, but Born from Ice still promises enough novelty to merit a mention in our list. It is a project made by Small Cog Creative that raised 57,000 euros on Kickstarter with about 800 backers. The idea behind this game is to bring tabletop role-playing game to the Stone Age. There will be 3 books in the initial lineup, a core book containing the rules of the game and the description of the setting and monsters, as well as rules on how to create your own prehistoric adventures. An epic adventure path that will take players from 1st to 20th level, and finally a player's guide with 6 classes, more than 15 subclasses, more than 20 backgrounds, feats, an equipment guide, and of course a new species, the Homo sapiens. Again, I went to peruse the Quick Start guide, which is already available for free on DriveThruRPG, and yes, you can find it in the scroll of links down below. And what I found I liked quite a bit. The layout is well readable and the artwork has a recognizable style and is well interspersed with the text. The basic idea is not bad at all, and the execution, as far as I could see, seems well done. I have some doubts about the use of 5th edition D&D as a framework, especially at the higher levels, but the rest seems well done. You also find an adventure to playtest material made available and ready to use character sheets. Among the smaller scale project on this list, Born from Ice is one of my favorites. Trio of books give you everything you need to play in a typical but engaging D&D campaign, set in the Stone Age, with a whole new system around it to support the flavor of the experience. It's kind of like a homebrew where you find a lot of work already done for you. Clearly, we will have to wait for the release due in December 2025 to judge and to see how good is the material provided, but so far the premise seems promising enough. But let's turn to Cairn and its 2nd edition, founded via a 226,000 Kickstarter and 4,649 backers. The original Cairn was a bestseller on DriveThruRPG and served as a framework for games such as Knave and Into the Odd. The 2nd edition is expected to be released in March 2025 and promises the usual mix of adventure and strangeness, with a dark forest filled with hidden treasures, bizarre denizens and unnameable monstrosities, serving as a backdrop for the vicissitude of characters generated by a fast-paced random system. The project includes an expanded player's guide, a brand new warden's guide, basically the game master's guide, and a new adventure, Trouble in Twin Lakes, all collected in a sturdy box set filled with useful game tools. The game system is minimal as usual, based on the 3 attributes Strength, Dexterity and Willpower, and the randomly determined hit protection value. You also have materials for the Game Masters with plenty of tables to generate whole sessions in the woods, the depths of the roots or elsewhere. But let's move on to Castles in the Air. And no, I'm not talking about the ones we TTRPG enthusiasts build in our minds when we look back on our game sessions. There's actually an RPG entitled just that, Castles in the Air. Based on the Good Society system, this game about the Gilded Age has raised 78,000 Australian dollars from 656 backers, and is one of the smallest of the ones we will mention here. The kind of stories that can be told with this game are similar to Little Women and the like, so we're still talking about a fairly select niche. From an artistic point of view, the game far surpassed my expectations. It has a magnificent layout and extremely well-rendered artwork. The gist of the game is a coming-of-age story that takes the characters as they grow from childhood to adulthood, dealing with their dreams, the castles in the air that give the game its name, deepening their crucial relationships, experiencing the background of their family, and contending with their childhood rival. After that, the character will grow up, moving from their form as a child to that of an adult, where dreams are replaced by desires. Roles change along with relationships, but enemies remain. This game actually does something new, and I must say that I'm very interested in taking a look at it once it comes out in March. The themes are definitely not ones I am accustomed to in a role-playing game, but for cozy game nights it could definitely be an option. I'm mostly interested in the design choices, which might bring something new to the TTRPG landscape, and also intrigued by how the concept of age transition can be woven into a role-playing game. You can get a sneak peek at chapter 1 of the book in the scroll of links down below. Let's turn to one of the projects that I have followed most closely since its announcement, Cohors Cthulhu. Basically, Cthulhu in Roman times. There are quite a few things to say here. The game was expected as early as last year, but it was delayed a bit, and now is scheduled for release this year. In its last update from December 2024, Modiphius promised a March release. The hype in the meantime has waned a bit. If you think it was ranked the 6th most anticipated game on Endward's list last year, and it's not even there this year, but it is nothing impossible to recover from if it will indeed turn out to be a good game. Behind the project is Chris Burge from Modiphius, the man responsible for another Cthulhuoid game, such as Outgunned Cthulhu, which also came out of a Kickstarter. The smartest among you will have already drawn conclusions. Cohors Cthulhu will be a game based on the 2d20 system of Modiphius, which has its fans and its detractors. It raised £221,000 from 2,321 backers. I personally expected it would do better, but for many the presence of Cthulhu Invictus, the version of the Call of Cthulhu set in the Roman era, must have made this product redundant. Nevertheless, I personally am fascinated by it. As is often the case with Modiphius, there is also a war game related to this TTRPG. It is Cohors Cthulhu Tactics, and is currently on Kickstarter as well. It comes from the same producers of wargames such as Fallout, Skyrim, and many others. The setting is that of the early Roman Empire, and the themes those we would expect: epic heroism, intrigue, faction conflict, and secret wars with unnameable entities hidden beyond the thresholds of sanity and collective knowledge. The free quick start is already available. You can find it in the scroll of links down below. From it, you can tell the great graphic care with which this project has been produced, impeccable just as in Modiphius style. The complete project will consist of a player's guide, a game master's guide, adventures centered around themes such as Germany, and a number of stretch goals that will probably be adapted in the retail version: Celtic and Yog-Sothoth spellbook, additional cultures, and animal companion rules. There is even an anthology of short story, a touch I find particularly apt for immersing oneself in the atmosphere of the game. And of course you have the custom dice, game master tools, in the Modiphius tradition, unofficial screen, and even themed miniatures. In short, if you hate the 2d20 system, you can probably give this game a solid pass. If, on the other hand, you are intrigued or have enjoyed the 2d20 system in its other iterations, such as Outgunned Cthulhu, Fallout, Dishonored, or Dune, and if you also like Lovecraftian mythos, well, this is a game you should be looking forward to. For me, it is an interesting project, which I will follow even if I have not funded. Two RPGs, one game. This is what you get with Cold City Hot War. Set in a divided Berlin, Cold City is about suspicion, distrust, and political ambition. Hot War, on the other hand, is set in 1963 London, I hear after the outbreak of the Cold War, a conflict in which nuclear weapons are not the worst of those used. Now it's time to rebuild, but everyone has their own ambitions. The characters will operate in this post-apocalyptic world. They will be a band of men and women who perform tasks too dirty or dangerous for anyone else. Very little is yet known about this game by John Hodgson, former author of Beowulf: Age of Heroes, but the Kickstarter is expected to open in early 2025. The original game was published in 2007, and this will be a new edition. A common trend in TTRPGs in recent years, and as we shall see also in the coming year, is the rediscovery and TTRPG conversion of sword and sorcery classics. Now, Conan the Barbarian already had its own official TTRPG by Modiphius, but the line was discontinued in 2022. And for those who want more adventures in Robert Howard's world, Monolith brings us Conan the Hyborean Age. It's scheduled for release in August 2025, and as you can expect, well, it's a role-playing about Conan. Well, actually, more about the world of Conan, so sword and sorcery, dynamic actions with pop tones, evocative battles, and a King Conan sitting on the throne of Aquilonia, freeing up space for other adventurers. In charge of the project is Monolith, which has several projects this year, between these and Gotham City Chronicles, which will come out in 2026, so is not on this list, and is currently being founded on GameFound. The team has stated that they want to take a fresh approach to the Conan's license, offering an RPG unburdened by overly cumbersome rules, with a narrative focus on characters, which will be based on dramatic conflicts but aspiring to maintain the tone of Conan's stories. Exactly as in the case of Gotham, then, it should be pointed out that Monolith has also made a Conan board game, and that they have cross-play potential. You can use the board game's maps, miniatures, counters, and other components for the role-playing game, even if they're not needed, of course. This is an interesting trend, I think, which we have also seen with Modiphius and its board games. Is this a new frontier for TTRPGs to be developed in parallel or worse as board games spin-offs? You'll find the quick start rules for this game in the scroll of links down below. The rules are easy to absorb and the game flows smoothly as intended by its authors. The Edwardian flavor doesn't shine through too much in the adventure or the system though, and that has been the most common criticism I've heard about this game. This project will include a core book with all the rules and 2 adventure books, all supplemented of course by the inevitable accessories such as screen, custom dice and other amenities. The books have an impeccable graphic presentation and really top-notch artwork, giving it a premium quality project look and feel. Let's just hope the system is just as high quality. After so many licensed games, let's finally move on to a project of some depth, but based on an original IP. Coriolis, the Great Dark, marks the return of Free League's beloved sci-fi world. The Kickstarter raised 650,000 euros from nearly 7,000 backers, and the game ranked 7th on N-Word's 2025 most anticipated TTRPG list. Coming in March 2025, it is very likely to be yet another recent success for Free League, and together with the new edition of Alien, it gives us a measure of how the Swedish house is officially entering the second age of its classic RPGs, putting forward new editions for them. May it be soon the turn of others such as Vaesen. Meanwhile, Coriolis shows great promise. Humanity has found its home on a dying city, Ship City, but explorers and adventurers continue to explore the space and depths, keeping the light of hope burning. People steer clear of the enigmatic ruins of the Great Dark with its blight, but the most intrepid have the courage, or folly, to delve into its depths in search of secrets and resources. And as much as it is the harbinger of doom, the blight that spreads from the Great Dark is also a beacon of hope, for wherever there is corruption, there also are artifacts to be found and mysteries to be solved. After all, with Ship City teetering on the brink of the end, even a light shining in the darkness is better than absolute darkness. For those unfamiliar with Coriolis, the pitch is this. Inspired by 19th century expeditions between underwater exploration and pulp archaeology, this is a game of exploration and intrigue in which players participate in dangerous expeditions, explore the intrigues of Ship City, and hunt for the keys that will unlock the mysteries of this lost horizon. The quick start guide for this new edition is already available for free. You'll find it in the scroll of links down below. The main changes are the system, which has been updated and improved, and the setting, which is new and brings the chronology of the universe forward. As always, the game is based on Free League's Year Zero engine, which many will be familiar with and which I will not expand on here. I will say, however, that the book is just as charming as the first one graphically, in fact, perhaps even more so. After all, Free League is widely known for the quality of its TTRPG books. The project includes a core rulebook and a campaign called The Flowers of Algorab, packed in a box complete with dice, maps and handouts, just as I had hoped. I hope that many will follow Free League's example and start releasing adventures in box sets, that it's so much better. As a side note, keep in mind that the game will have support for Alchemy, Free League's own virtual tabletop. Okay, so this is the project I've been waiting with the most anticipation of all. I have envisioned it, invoked it, begged for it, waited for it, hoped for it, and finally, here it is. The tabletop RPG based on the Cosmere, the multiverse by my favorite fantasy author, Brandon Sanderson. If you do not know him, do yourself a favor and go read his works. I assure you that you will not regret it. Soon I will start bringing you content on the channel to approach the release of the RPG, which is planned in 2 waves. September 2025 for the Stormlight Archive books, and September 2026 for the Mistborn books. Of course, Brandon Sanderson is not only my favorite fantasy author. The Kickstarter for this project has raised a whopping $15 million. Yes, you heard that right, $15 million from its 55,000 backers, which of course includes me. The authoring team is that of Brotherwise Game, a young company with no major TTRPG titles on its resume. And that is perhaps the big question mark about this gargantuan production, the largest Kickstarter ever created in the TTRPG field, the one that has raised the most funding and garnered the most trust. Brotherwise Games have a difficult task ahead of them, because the hype behind such a production is at levels bordering on unmanageable. So far, however, they have done very well for themselves. The recent card game based on Mistborn, one of Sanderson's series, has been racking up sales and has remained firmly at the top of Board Game Geek's The Hotness chart since its release. One of the most interesting things is that Sanderson's and his team personally participated in the project, providing their writing expertise for the adventures, and here of course I'm talking about the TTRPG and not a board game. As for the system, I will tell you more in a dedicated video. For now, suffice it to say that this is a D20 system. The authors did not want to take unnecessary risks, and besides, many of Sanderson's stories are epic fantasy, where heroes reach incredible levels of power. If there is one setting in which the D20 system can shine, this is certainly it. The choice was a thoughtful one. Many of the game's mechanics closely trace D&D 5th edition, while distancing themselves from it in some essential points. Take the plot dice, for example, designed to create an emergent narrative in the game, or the heroic path, designed to give a different character progression than in D&D, or the new initiative system. Those who tried it at Gen Con and other conventions held recently spoke enthusiastically of it as a fresh and engaging experience. It has this feeling of old and new mixed in, and the combat actually seems to differ from D&D, offering more narrative cues and moving away from the wargaming legacy of Dungeons & Dragons. The artwork is of an unparalleled level, probably superior to that of any other TTRPG other than D&D itself, and personally preferable in terms of art direction. The layout is impeccable, the writing effective and pleasant to read. On DriveThruRPG you will find better rules, an adventure inspired by the fabled Bridge 9 from the Way of Kings, and the first issue of Chasm Fiend, a magazine devoted entirely to this RPG. A living RPG, as the authors have called it, because it will expand over time. It will start with the world of Roshar, the epic fantasy setting of the Stormlight Archive, my favorite Brandon Sanderson saga, but then the books will cover other worlds such as that of Mistborn, Elantris, Warbreaker, White Sand, and so on. All of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere universes will be covered in books and expansions. The Kickstarter starts with the Stormlight Archive, with a player handbook, a setting handbook, a screen, a full adventure, and lots of smaller adventures, together with add-ons like map packs, item cards, custom dice, custom tokens, custom miniatures, you get the idea. And all of this will come back with Mistborn, which will have its own player's handbook, its own setting book, its own adventure, and so on. Although we don't have specialized custom dice or miniatures for this wave of release. We will talk more about this project, rest assured. For now, we just have to wait for the release, hoping that the wait will be worth the result. Let us return to more contained, but no less promising projects. Curseborne is a game in which you are the monsters. Descendants of a monstrous heritage, the characters move through a modern world in which they must rebel against ancient rivalries between families, untangle the web of curses that bind them, and battle their inhuman rivals in a quest for power, new or lost. Curseborne has raised nearly $200,000 through its Kickstarter from 3,000 backers. Created by American author Richard Thomas, it is scheduled for release in October 2025 for the PDF and in December 2026 for the print version, which will include a single book divided into 2 parts. one devoted to the setting and the character options, and the other with the game rules and its story path ultra system, the same we saw in At the Gates. In this setting, the system can help but be closely reminiscent of the World of Darkness games, especially if you think that here players will be able to play as exiled angels and demons, of course, but also as vampires, werewolves and sorcerers. In particular, it reminded me of Vampire the Masquerade. If this game wants to carve out its own space, it will have to be able to distinguish itself from its illustrious predecessor. The quality of the artwork and the layout is top-notch though. Let us move on to another big project. We've been waiting for it, we've watched it take its first steps, and this should be the year when it finally arrives in our hands. Daggerheart, the fantasy role-playing game from Darrington Press, the publishing house affiliated with Critical Role. Candela Obscura, the other original RPG by these authors, has met with mixed fortunes, but with Daggerheart, Darrington is moving into more familiar territory. Hence, the expectations of many are high. Not surprisingly, the game ranked third on Endward's list of the most anticipated games of 2025. Unlike all the games we've seen so far, Daggerheart was not born out of a crowdfunding campaign, which is good news. There are still independently developed RPGs, and that is very good, I think, for the industry. As a game, Daggerheart focuses everything on narrative collaboration, involving players in the same process of world creation. The game goes in the opposite direction from the general market trends, which are increasingly leaning towards shorter adventures, and is focused on offering a Critical Role-like gaming experience in terms of length, with wide-ranging campaigns aimed at allowing character development in the likes of Vox Machina or the Mighty Nine. The game has been in playtest for a very long time, with the authors busy receiving feedback from the community and fixing what was not working properly. The partnership with Critical Role will be crucial in determining the success or failure of this system, the most innovative aspect of which probably lies in the use of hope and fear dice, d12s that determine a kind of meta-currency to be used to create an emergent narrative. When hope prevails, players will be able to enhance their abilities, while when fear prevails, it will be the game master who can use it to pose new challenges to the characters and to complicate the narrative, according to a system that reminds me a bit of Modiphius's 2d20, and which has some fans but many detractors in that context. I'm really curious to see how Daggerheart will implement this mechanic. Another interesting aspect is the use of cards to represent crucial aspects of the character, such as their lineage, their home community, their subclass, their domain, and their abilities. Characters are created through cards, making them central elements of the game and not just accessories. The project currently has a core set that includes the cards, possibly expandable to a limited edition. If you would like to take a look at the game, search for the scroll of links down below for the beta 1.5 in two versions, for game masters and for players. Artwork and layout are amazing, but that was to be expected. There is no shortage of digital support either, with the implementation in Nexus also available for free playtesting. It will just have to be seen how much and how well the game will be supported and how the system will work in practice. From what I've been able to see, the game has a lot of promising ideas, especially in terms of character creation and card use, but some of its mechanics, for example the introduction of meta-currencies, run a bit counter to the kind of narrative that the game would like to deliver. There are also problems with damage and armor management that the community pointed out, but there is still time to fix them. In short, let's wait and hope this will be a good game. Planned release date is for spring 2025.
Okay, let's talk about another highly anticipated project, Dolmenwood. It was ranked 6th in Endward's most anticipated list for 2025. The Kickstarter was a success, with nearly 11,000 backers and 1.4 million raised. The setting is inspired by fairy tales and folklore of the British Isle, and blends darkness and extravagance, wonder and strangeness, all perfectly conjured by evocative illustrations and delightful writing. The project consists of 3 books. The player's book contains the rules of the game and character options. The campaign book presents an immersive and detailed setting, and the monster book offers a host of creatures to use for years and years of play. Characters can be knights, thieves, mages, clerics, bards, and so on, but the originality is in the races. Goat-faced Braggle, fairy elves, talking cats, humans of all sorts, fungi creatures called mosslings or bat-faced woodgrue.
The system is heavily focused on a sandbox experience, with rules for travel, exploration and encampment. The goal is to explore the Dolmenwood map, populated by 200 hexes, 12 settlements, more than 280 NPCs and as many as 7 major factions. The rules follow the guidelines of the old school essentials, customizing and expanding it to best reflect the setting. So no surprises. 6 ability scores, classes, hit points, armor class and saving throws. There will also be no shortage of official adventures. 4 are included in the Kickstarter. The project also includes a set of custom miniatures, custom dice, a screen, and a fabric map of Dolmenwood, which could be very useful in a sandbox game. There will even be an official soundtrack for you to use during your game sessions. In short, this is a system that plays it safe by relying on streamlined and established mechanics and staking everything on the setting as a distinctive point. Dolmenwood seems to me to have all the trappings of a game that knows what it wants and how to get it. It was scheduled for release last year, but it got delayed and is now expected for 2025. If you want to try it, you can find the quick start in the scroll of links down below. If you are tired about 5e Dungeons & Dragons clones, you may want to make an exception for this one, DC20. This system is the final outcome of the work done over the years by the Dungeon Coach on his YouTube channel. The content creator has created a multitude of house rules, improvements and changes to the basic framework of D&D, from rules to improve combat to new ways to manage rest and travel. All of this has come together in DC20, a project that has raised $2.2 million on Kickstarter from more than 20,000 backers. Basic idea is the same as that behind other projects that stormed the crowdfunding TTRPG scene this year, a system that combines the familiar with the new. In this case, the base is that of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, but with numerous changes, the most interesting of which, at least in my opinion, is the one involving dynamic interaction between characters during combat, a mechanic that I've always been interested in implementing in my own games, but I had long since given up as impossible to achieve. I'm very curious to see if DC20 can nail it and find that formula that has eluded me for years. The basic concept behind the design philosophy of this game is a focus on what the author calls dynamic agency. In essence, it translates into a 4-action system that really closely resembles Pathfinder 2nd edition, with an extra action and some interesting modification, such as the ability to spend some actions to enhance one of the actions already taken, for example spending 2 actions instead of 1 to attack with greater accuracy or strength, or spending more action to cast a cantrip in order to enhance it. This, I must admit, has intrigued me quite a bit and I can wait to see how we will play at the table. Magic has also been overhauled compared to D&D, abandoning the Vancian system and introducing mana points, with which to cast and enhance spells. Warriors have stamina points instead, with which they can enhance their attacks or perform maneuvers in combat. The project seems to me one to keep an eye on. Unfortunately, the beta rules are only available to backers, so no free quick start for others. There is, however, a rules preview that you can download from the scroll of links down below. The release is scheduled for October 2025 and the project is centered on a single core rulebook. The style of artwork and layout is original and quite cartoonish, so you may or may not like it. Personally, it's not my cup of tea, but honestly that's a matter of personal taste, although the level of layout and artwork is a couple of steps below some of the projects we've already seen, such as the Cosmere RPG. But let's move on to something completely different. Evolved Superheroic Time Travel is, well, a game about Marvel superheroes without Marvel's license. If the super fantasy of D&D is not enough for you and you literally want to play a time-traveling superhero and you dislike the Marvel Multiverse role-playing game, then this might be the game for you. This project is tiny, raising 35,000 euros from 427 backers and is based on the Dungeon Crawl Classics RPG, modified to become the Evolved RPG. The interior arc is black and white and quite unique, something I appreciate because it helps in establishing a distinctive identity for this game. This will be a hefty tome with 600 plus pages, and the project only includes the core book aside from add-ons. There has been a recent scandal with one of the writers responsible for one of the Evolved add-on adventures involved in an investigation, so the game will feature only 4 adventures instead of 5. The project is due out in 2025 and very close to completion, so we will wait and see how it turns out. Okay, so the next one is kind of different from what we've seen so far, because Exodus is a tabletop role-playing game based on the eponymous and upcoming sci-fi video game from Archetype Entertainment, a division of Wizards of the Coast. Yep, you heard it right. The TTRPG was created by James Owen, the mind behind the video game itself, and explores the futuristic world of Exodus. You may know Owen for a third-party supplement for D&D 5e called Odyssey of the Dragonlord and other supplements over on the DM's Guild. In the game, you'll get to lead the travelers in the hunt to steal alien weapons and technology from the Celestials, the most powerful enemy in the universe. The artwork and layout of the book is top-notch, but unfortunately there's nothing I can tell you about the writing since I didn't have the chance to get my hands on a copy since it was limited and you needed some kind of code to access it. I am actually rather confused about the access to this game, but I guess that we will learn more about it as we progress into 2025. Since we're talking about games based on 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, here's another one about Findishora, FiveEvil by Handiwork Games. There has been a £9,000 Kickstarter for this game by the same John Ogson we've met before while speaking about Cold War Hot City. The primary focus of this game is modern-day horror, inspired by Stephen King and moody, character-driven horror films like The Ritual, The Descent, and Jacob's Ladder, and the scariest of Twin Peaks episodes. FiveEvil is designed to evoke the horror genre via a set of clever twists on the underlying 5th edition rule set. This is not as much as a version of 5e, but more like a rule set about 5e, making use of its changes to intensify the horror. Worst case scenario, this will be a stretch of the D&D rules in a way that make them not work at all. Best case scenario, however, this can be a version of 5e that doesn't suck at aura. Just kidding, Wizards of the Coast. Some highlights we could mention are lower hit points for characters, a new suffering mechanic as a way to track descriptive damage, doom checks to let GMs actually bring the fear into the game, a structure for investigating a creature, since here you want everything to sound rare and creepy, and a framework for hunts and chases, aimed at portraying the typical horror experience of being chased down by some horrific monster, cause who doesn't like that? Rather than seeking out evil in order to vanquish it or investigating clues to battle malign influences, characters in FiveEvil are regular people trapped in a terrifying situation, where fighting isn't likely to help. This makes me question the choice of 5e as the base system for the game, but hey, who knows, maybe they found a way in which the characters can actually die in that system or even get close. There's a free preview of the game you can download from drivethrurpg.com that's called Splinters. I'll link it in the scroll of knowledge down below. I kinda like both the layout and the artwork for this game. The physical book is about to be delivered to bakers on July 2025. Okay, so the next one is a game that I really want to see succeed. Gloomhaven has been one of the most engaging, tactically challenging, and unrelentingly fun experience I have ever had with a board game. I played the physical version, and as if 100 hours worth of play weren't enough, I went ahead and played it again a few years later over on PC, thanks to a well-designed video game porting. And now we get the Tabletop RPG. So, let me tell you what Gloomhaven is. First, the bottom line is that Gloomhaven was a massive hit as a board game. It topped the Board Game Geek charts for years and was hugely acclaimed by both critics and players. It recently got a sequel in the form of Frosthaven. But if you want to know what this game was about, imagine a sprawling dungeon crawler with very cool quests and an astoundingly good card mechanic. Every card had 2 halves, each with an initiative. You played it face down and hoped that your planning was good enough to survive another round. The classes were incredibly diverse and well designed, and each of them had its own deck of card abilities, allowing for a different experience based on the class you played. Gloomhaven was an unforgiving tactical game where you had to strategize and plan every move very carefully, lest you run out of cards, which in the game happened to be your hit points too, so no cards, no health left, you die. Every game was a careful resource management challenge, and I had a blast with it. The TTRPG has been around for quite some time now. The Kickstarter debuted in 2023 and the core book has not yet been released. According to the last update by the authors, it is in our graphic phase, past development and playtesting and getting ready for production. And yet we know surprisingly little about how the game will actually work. We have a live play with a Good Time Society where the role-playing game really looks like a slightly freer version of the board game with some social interaction in it, but I wouldn't trust that. We don't even have a quick start or anything to try out the system, so you can understand the community being a bit nervous about the game itself. We have seen some artwork and the general layout of how the book is going to look in past updates from the developers, but nothing more. Let's hope 2025 is gonna be the year we get to play this RPG, as the second edition of the board game also draws closer. So far we've seen role-playing games inspired by comic books, movies, books, board games and, of course, video games. Continuing along this trend, Modiphius is going to bring us Heroes of Might and Magic, another RPG born from a video game after Dishonored and Fallout. Might and Magic was a series of science fantasy role-playing video games from the 80s and the 90s. The transition between the fantasy world of the start of the games and the sci-fi tropes found in late game was one aspect that stuck with me even after all these years. The setting is a fictional galaxy where the planets are overseen by the Ancients, powerful race of space travelers who seeded the planets with humans, elves, dwarves, and so on. The TTRPG is yet another licensed game produced by Modiphius. Someone in the community thinks that Modiphius put quantity over quality in their games, but we aren't here to judge. Let's just say that Modiphius is beyond more than one game in this list. One thing that bugs me a little is that the tabletop role-playing game promises to make players relive some of the most epic and memorable moments of the saga. Which makes sense for many who don't know the franchise, but are those people even interested in this game, considering how many good games are out there already? I can see fans of the Might and Magic games flocking to this TTRPG out of nostalgia, but I wonder whether to make them replay the same things they could still remember is a good choice for a tabletop RPG. Anyway, this is the first application of Modiphius' D20 system to a high fantasy setting. This really sounds like Modiphius' D&D to me, but there's nothing wrong with that, as long as the game is good. The system is well known, loved by some, and given a wide berth by many. Personally, I had my share of fun with it. This wasn't a Kickstarter, and perhaps this is for the best, considering how many Modiphius already has, and we are yet to see Discord. I have no information about a release date for this product, nor any clue about a quick start being available, so I guess we shall wait and see where this goes. Let's move to another project. Hollows is a game where you battle other people's personal demons in a boss fight center system focused on tactical depth and spectacular combat. The project by Rowan, Wook and Daggerheart, the same team behind the recent Eat the Reich, has been backed by almost 3,000 people and has gathered roughly £250,000. The authors claim to have made a combat engine that delivers, I quote, the best boss fights in TTRPG, and I really hope they are right. If you want to take a look yourself, you can download the quick start for this game in the link you can find in the scroll of links down below. This 58 pages PDF contains the rules and an adventure named The Sins of Grecian Priory, and is supplemented by a free pack of character sheet ready to use. This game is for Soulsborne fans and dark fantasy enthusiasts. The art in the book reminds me of Bloodborne more than anything else, and the layout is good, although not amazing for my own personal taste. Set in a rotting world, Hollows has the players impersonate hunters tasked with killing the horrid monsters that call the Isle home. The rot running through the setting has its source in the malignancies: dominion, fear, fury, grief, anger and pride. These cosmic powers latch onto people whose cruelty or suffering resonates with them, infesting and empowering them until they bloom into a rotten fruit of wickedness, a hollow, a pocket of blighted unreality in the form of its creator's own personal hell. The system is based around a simple D20 mechanic where actions can fail, succeed or succeed brilliantly, and failure is always interesting. It exposes the hunter to great risk, creating moments for other players to step in, support and help hold the line. Gameplay moves between exploring Hollow's poisoned world, rules light and roleplay heavy, and many versus one tactical boss fights. Just as we could expect from a game explicitly inspired by Dark Souls, that is expected and intended in Hollows. Dying is basically a strong debuff that slows a character down and gives the Hollow more opportunities to work against them, but it also gives a hunter a chance to come back stronger. I think the game has some appeal. There's an official Dark Souls role-playing game out there, so there's some competition already in its niche, but I feel like if they nail the boss fights, this game will conquer its fans. I plan to give this game a try in the near future, but I haven't yet, so I will refrain from giving you my opinions on it. All I can say is that the full version of the rules is due out in Q3 2025, but I hope this will turn out to be a game that improves the TTRPG scene by providing a way to play cool boss battles with dice and pens. Did I get you excited from some Bloodborne-esque monster slaying? Well, now get ready for a change of course as we talk about Land of Him, a light-hearted role-playing game where the Lord of the Rings meets the Muppet, with just a dash of Mad Max dystopia. The project has been backed by more than 2,600 people for approximately $240,000. As you can expect from a game with these premises, the rules are designed to be simple and intuitive, support creativity and focus on role-playing, with some catchy artworks and a clear layout. The project is made up of a box set containing a core rulebook, a bestiary, a setting that doubles as a sandbox campaign, a map for exploration and some meeples. The system has simple dice mechanics based on the use of d12s. Any check you perform as you roll 1d12, then add a relevant skill modifier and check a table for results, where 1 and 2 are complete failures and a 12 a complete success. This is a game you can find attractive or a hard pass just as easily if you don't like the themes or the aesthetics. You can find a link to Land of Him's free quick start in the scroll of links down below. The game has been long delayed from its original 2023 release and should become available in 2025. I wanna be honest with you. When I saw the name of N-Word's most anticipated TTRPG poll winner, I was surprised. Then I learned more about Legend in the Mists and I was not so surprised anymore, by which I mean that now I understand why people are so hyped about this game. The idea behind this game is simple, as many great ideas are. A rustic fantasy tabletop RPG based on City of Mist, the acclaimed cinematic modern fantasy RPG that was a massive hit in 2017 after its $104,000 Kickstarter. Where City of the Mist was a urban fantasy detective game with some neo-noir flavor, Legend in the Mist is closer to classic fantasy such as The Lord of the Rings, The Wheel of Time and Princess Mononoke. The Kickstarter collected $855,000 from more than 8,000 backers and is filled with exclusives. I think that the main reason for this success is that the game is from a well-established author, Amit Moshi from Son of Oak Studio. Many other big projects of 2025 have newish themes behind them, at least in terms of TTRPG design, such in the case of Brotherwise Games for Cosmere. Here you have an author you can trust and you kinda know what you're getting. This is going to be a narrative RPG where you play villagers going on an adventure in a rustic landscape filled with interesting areas that feels like a fireside tale and where story details can affect gameplay, with a focus on personal story arcs that have the potential to transform the player characters. This project includes 2 books, the core book, containing the game's rules and player options, and the Arts of Revendale setting book. They are complemented by a number of accessories, such as pre-made characters folios that reminded me of the board game Descent, a GM screen, dice, cards, maps, and more. There will also be 5 adventures ready to be played and support for Alchemy VTT. Continuing the solo trend but taking it to the next level, this game includes a solo mode and a duo mode, so that you can play it alone or with a single person. A demo for the game is downloadable from the link I'll provide in the scroll of links down below. It's called The Tinderbox and it includes the abridged version of the rules, a short adventure called A Shadow in the Valley, and few accessories such as pre-generated characters. I have to say that one of the best things about making this video was to find out and to discover this game, and so I'm really excited to see how this game will turn out to be, and I can't wait to try and test it. And I even went as far as to back it on the Kickstarter for the pre-order because I can't wait to get the chance to play it. There's a game that's been in development for a very long time, and there are those who are waiting for it. Fortunately for them, the game was never a Kickstarter, so the waiting process is a little less anxious. Still, some are still waiting for Lords of the Middle Sea, a tabletop RPG by Chaosium based on the 1978 board game. We know very little about the game itself, but from a bit of investigation I learned that art for the game is mostly done, rules nearly finalized, while the setting material is in need of a bit of a polish. We don't know anything more about the game other than that it has been in development since 2020 and it is going to use the basic role-playing rules. Perhaps this will be the year we finally get to play this game. Lovecraftesque was an innovative game, won the Italian Game of the Year award and influenced a generation of mystery games. It even had hidden UV art throughout. The second edition has been funded with a 45,000 Kickstarter by 687 bakers. It will consist in a box set with slicker and easy to learn rules, brand new art and new scenarios. The game always struck me for its truthfulness to Lovecraft's original stories, where a lone individual stumbles upon clues to something terrible. At first they dismiss it, but piece by piece a picture emerges, until suddenly it becomes impossible to deny. They plunge into shadow, recoiling in horror, but it's already too late. The horrifying truth is laid bare and they are consumed by madness. This is the kind of experience and story that Lovecraftesque aims at providing. For those who don't know the first edition, Lovecraftesque is a GM-less tabletop game, designed to be played in a single session of slow-burning mystery, culminating in a climactic scene of horror. In this game, you create the monsters and mysteries, with all the players sharing control of a single character and contributing clues to surprise and creep each other out. The rules guide the story as an invisible GM, ensuring the story flows seamlessly. This is a perfect pick-up game. You can play it at a convention or even as a palate cleanser between longer campaigns. It does something very different from other RPGs and is a narrative-focused experience that everyone can enjoy. Shipping to bakers is estimated by August 2025. This new edition doesn't bring anything dramatically different or new, but it will include some revision, updates and new scenarios. So if you don't have the first one, or if you love the first one, you should really consider giving it a chance. One of the most successful crowdfunding TTRPG projects of 2024 was Monty Python's Cocurricular Medieval Reenactment program. Unsurprisingly, especially if you know license, this TTRPG focused on imaginative, highly unpredictable gameplay. The tone is comedic, while the theme is loosely medieval. The project raised almost $2 million from 15,000 bakers. There's a 77-page quick start for the game in the scroll of links down below, where you'll find the condensed rules, pre-generated characters and a ready-to-run adventure. The layout is quite good and features some handwritten notes as you could expect from a student's notebook. The artwork didn't impress me, although having cool art is not as necessary for this game as it is for others, since the primary intent here is not to be evocative but to be comical. The game uses 5 attributes with serious and silly versions of them and involves unusual dice such as D18s, D16s and D14s. You also have truthing and spamming as critical successes and critical failures respectively, and they work in a peculiar way. If you get the maximum result possible on a die, you get to roll another larger die and add its result to the first roll in case of a truthing. If, however, you get a 1 on any die roll, you decrease the trait you are using 1 trait toward the silly end of things on the character sheet and you receive a demerit token. This is a game for people who enjoy having fun though, so if your total on any roll brought on by a truthing totals 20 or higher, you get a demerit token as well. There are also merit tokens that you can spend to cancel a demerit or roll with advantage. I won't go any deeper, but it seems to me that this game could bring some fresh air in many aspects of the traditional tabletop RPGs, so it's worth keeping tab on it, since the inborn comical approach of the system might allow authors to actually try something new and unique and to explore new directions. Mythcraft is an existing D20 fantasy tabletop role-playing game with focus on character creation options, an intuitive magic system, and a true action point system similar to Divinity video games, where you get to keep the action points you don't spend on your turn so you can use them on your next turn. For some, the game strikes exactly the right balance between customization and depth, allowing interesting game mechanics to play easily at the table without overwhelming the players or the GM. This is basically another familiar yet new system, such as many strong entries in our list. In 2025, we're going to see Mythcraft announced, a new updated version of Mythcraft, funded with $1,024,000 by 868 backers. Not much, but the game looks way cooler than the numbers would suggest. I never had a chance to play the original, but I might give this enhanced edition a try, especially because I really like the general idea behind it. The art is quite enticing too, and far superior, in my opinion at least, to some richer projects. The enhanced edition will bring 3 brand new adventures, and there is one I couldn't help but gander at. Mountains of Madness, inspired by one of my favorite stories by H.P. Lovecraft. There's even a collection of 4 fantasy fiction stories set in the world of Ansara, support for Roll20 and Foundry, cool accessories, and all the extra goodness Kickstarter usually offer. I didn't know about this game, but after looking into it for this video, I became very interested in it. I will take a look at the quick start first. If you're interested too, then you'll find it in the scroll of links down below. If you like the ultra-streamlined, lightning-fast rules of Into the Odd and Electric Bastionland, you may want to take a look at Mythic Bastionland, a new tabletop role-playing game by Chris McDowell, funded with about £270,000 by more than 5,000 bakers. The game is set in the past of Electric Bastionland, in a world inspired by British folklore and Arthurian legends. The art by Alex Sorensen is evocative and unique, and helps you in telling a story, which is something I really appreciate in a role-playing game. The rules are light, allowing for a focus on the flavor. X-scrolling, domain management, aging, exploration, and mass battles are all handled through fast and streamlined mechanics. You can play Mythic Bastionland with just a referee and a single player, or with up to 5 players and a referee. The game can be used for fast-paced one-shots or longer campaigns. No rolls to hit, you get straight to damage. And so do your foes though. The new gambit system will allow you to push your enemies, splinter shields, drag your foes down from their steeds, and so on. You begin play as a young knight-errant, seeking the glory to lead warbands, earn a place in court, and rule your own domain by hunting the myths of the game world. As your glory grows, you might embark on the legendary City Quest, an impossible challenge to find the city, a shining metropolis people only see in their dreams. If you want to give this game a try, something I would recommend if you like the themes and approach, you can access the free quick start rules through the scroll of links down below. The game is set for a 2025 release after missing its initial 2024 release. Our Golden Age is a sequel based on Ultraviolet Grassland that is coming out by the end of August. It was funded by a $489,000 Kickstarter by more than 4,000 bakers. The gold box comes with a rulebook, a full adventure, a grand map, the dice set, a tour guide screen, and some cards. The game system, which is minimalist as you can expect, has been described by the author as, I quote, an expanded, deconstructed, bold, loose and perpetual psychedelic role-playing engine. First of all, the difference from the predecessor is a setting one. Where the ultraviolet glass was vast and empty, our Golden Age unveils the pond of pan-humanity, the Circle Sea. The art is inspired and inspiring, the layout both clear and eye-catching. Rules-wise, you can expect to find expanded character generation options, expanded rules for conflicts and challenges, techno-magic-like powers, and much more. If you like minimalist, rules-light games with a cool imagery, you may want to keep tabs on this game. Outgunned won several Emmys in 2024. It ranked second for Best Game and Product of the Year, in both cases after Shadowdark. Free League recently stepped up to produce Outgunned, making it more accessible. Outgunned Adventure is the Indiana Jones themed version of Outgunned, the first genre book in the Outgunned line. It can be played either as a standalone or as an expansion for Outgunned. The Kickstarter gathered €482,000 thanks to 3,490 backers. This is going to be a pulp adventure game inspired by the classics of the genre, such as the aforementioned Indiana Jones and The Mummy. In this cinematic action RPG, the players take the role of brave treasure hunters struggling to save the day, always outnumbered, always outgunned. The system is called Director's Cut and focuses on providing a highly cinematic game experience. You will use small pools of 6-sided dice to determine the outcome of all tasks that involve risk or danger. The goal is not to roll the highest or lowest possible total, but to combine as many equal symbols as you can in pairs, 3 of a kind, and so on. If you are curious to test this game, as I am, you can find the quick start guide in the scroll of links down below. As a measure of my personal tastes, I find the art in this book to be one of the best I have ever seen in a role-playing game, because that is the style I like, even though it's not as imaginific as other games such as Morkborg or others we have seen in this list. The layout is also very clear. The game is due out May 2025 and I'm quite hyped about it. Okay, this is gonna be a small entry in the list because I wasn't able to find much information about OSRIC 3.0. What I learned is that a new update of the old school rules is being developed by Mythmere Games, but my knowledge ends there. If you are a fan of old school retro clones, however, this is gonna be big news because many games are based on this system. Ever wondered how it would be to play as tiny bugs going on small adventures in a big world? Really? Well, who am I to judge? If that's your case, you might be interested in Pico, Tiny Bugs, Big World, a $112,000 Kickstarter scheduled for release in 2025. It uses the same Henny Award-winning Wild Words engine from the Wild Sea with some bugly twists. The Words engine is a fiction-first system with narrative and character decisions driving your interaction with the mechanics. You will use a d6 narrative dice pool that constantly pushes the story forward to outcomes of triumph, conflict, or disasters, with twists that you can activate by rolling doubles that add a host of special outcomes depending on both situation and player input. The game is set in a world where humans have gone whenever the dinosaurs went, leaving the bugs and other animals in control. Here you will solve mysteries, explore ruins, battle beasts, and even ride cats. If you're interested in the game, you'll find a quick start in the scroll of links down below. I found the art to be on point and cozy with a clear layout for what aims to be a simple game. After enjoying the Wild Sea, I'm kinda curious where Felix Isaacs, the designer and writer of this game, goes with Pico. Okay, do you ever feel like they're making a role-playing game for every single noteworthy IP out there? And what do you mean there's no Wheel of Time RPG yet? Are you telling me there's not even a Skyrim TTRPG available? Well, at least there's a Planet of Apes one, and it has got minis. Cool minis. Created by Magnetic Press, Planet of the Apes is the role-playing game inspired by the Simian movies that recently got a new entry with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. What a title! Even for a native speaker, there sure are many of the there. Anyway, in case you didn't know, this is a universe where apes rule over a dwindling human population. The Kickstarter was funded with $324,000 by almost 2,000 backers. The game is built on the D6 system by West End Games in its magnetic variant. It's easy to learn, yet full of challenges to master, according to the writers at least. The system is known for fast-paced combat, remarkable abilities, mementos that resonate with characters, and quirks and motives as key elements which define a character's persona. The project is led by Andrew Goska, who worked on the Alien RPG before, so even if Magnetic Press is not a very renowned team, we have at least one expert working on this game. If you wish to try the system for yourself, you can download both the Quick Start rules and the primer from the scroll of links down below. As the crowdfunding revealed, the game will include a core rulebook and a sourcebook, both with curved corners and spot UV elements. There's also going to be a campaign box set including a GM screen, some dice, token, cards, and a 72-page adventure entitled Into the Forbidden Zone. The game was supposed to be delivered in September, but it's not out yet, so it's likely that we will see a 2025 release for the physical copies. Even though I'm not a fan of the universe myself, I found the art to be very well done and the books themselves look amazing. I'll leave the judgment on the quality of the game to those who have actually played the game. Solo TTRPGs are increasingly widespread, and so you have met a 1000-year-old vampire approaches this genre in a unique way. In this game, you're a regular person who has made the acquaintance of a dangerous, unnatural creature. This vampire may be driven by hunger, love, art, anger, despair, fear, the need to fill its hearers with meaning, and so on. The vampire will tell stories, reveal secrets, intentionally or not, and interact with you and your circle of acquaintances. The vampire may manipulate your character, acting out the complicated games it has mastered over its long life. It may be hungry and cruel, or maybe it is just lonely and needing a friend. The game is played by answering a series of semi-random prompts. Through the answers, you learn about the world and the characters living in it. The emerging narrative forged this way is layered by the prompts themselves. The rules are quite simple and they allow to create a vampire with a will, hidden agendas and other surprises. The game has good replayability, giving you a wildly different story in every playthrough, something not so common for solo role-playing games. This is a sequel to 1000 Years Old Vampire and sports an impactful layout with handmade collages bringing the pages to life. The Kickstarter was funded with $284,000 by 4,000 backers. The book is estimated to release in early 2025. After Pathfinder 2nd edition, Paizo is ready for a new edition of their other major game, Starfinder. The game has been undergoing an intensive playtest for quite some time now, and its release is scheduled for August 2025. This is among the few non-crowdfunding games in the list, and this alone is worth some consideration. The scale of this game is, in many ways, on another level. You can download a 264 pages free PDF playtest from Paizo's website by clicking the appropriate link in the scrolls of links down below. Now, there is to be said that many Starfinder players were not happy with another game coming out for comprehensible reasons. That's not only because they don't like the idea to have to buy new books, neither just because they don't want their purchased products to feel outdated. A part of the skepticism around this release is its compatibility with Pathfinder 2nd edition, the other big tabletop RPG from Paizo. The playtest itself requires you to have the Pathfinder 2nd edition core rules, leading many to consider Starfinder as a Pathfinder in space, or even worse, as a source book with elements to add sci-fi in a Pathfinder game. While this compatibility has been welcomed by many, some Starfinder fans didn't appreciate it. They'd rather have an original game than a sci-fi expansion for Pathfinder. Both games being from Paizo, however, you cannot blame the authors for focusing on full compatibility between the two. There are some differences in how some things are handled, however. Equipment is a good example of this. Subsystems such as Magitech augmentations are another. Many people were pissed off for having to use the Pathfinder player core to play the playtest, but they won't need it to play the full game. Paizo will reprint everything needed to run Starfinder in the game's book. They just didn't want to do that for the playtest and charge people accordingly. What about the game though? The new system is heavily based on Pathfinder's 2E action system. When each turn you get 3 actions, you can spend however you want. You can use an action to move, to draw a weapon, to shoot with it, and so on. You'll have ancestries, classes, feats, equipment, and spells, just as in Pathfinder, although many of these elements will be thematically different, of course. The focus will be on tactical combat and moderately crunchy mechanics. I got a chance to try this game playtest and I have to say that it runs way smoother than Starfinder 1. Cross-contamination from Pathfinder has been good for the game, if I have to judge from the point of view of a player, not a fan. I consider Pathfinder 2nd edition as one of the best game systems on the market for what it wants to do, because it delivers exactly what it promises. Personally, I don't care if Starfinder 2E is a Pathfinder 2nd edition in space. If the core rules are good and the resulting game is good, I think there's no reason to complain. At least not for me. Starfinder 2nd edition finished 10th in N-Word's most anticipated tabletop role-playing game list. In typical Paizo style, the core rulebook features stunning art and a curated layout. If you like science fiction or if you like Pathfinder 2nd edition, then definitely check this game out when it releases this summer. Okay, so Stonetop is a fantasy game built on the idea that the heroes are the protectors of a small community. Not a new idea by any means, but here being local heroes is the focus of the whole experience. The game is set in a sort of non-historical Hyborean Age and is powered by the Apocalypse, if you know what I mean. And if you don't, well, Powered by the Apocalypse is a game engine where what characters do is resolved as moves. Creating a game in this system usually involves creating new and setting appropriate moves. Moves are resolved by rolling two six-sided dice, 2d6, and adding any relevant modifiers. Success levels fall on a scale of total success, partial success, or miss. Partial success often means success at a cost, where players must select an additional negative outcome as the price of their success. Likewise, miss often means a negative outcome that moves the narrative forward rather than nothing happens. Notable Powered by the Apocalypse games include Dungeon World, Ironsworn, Monster Hearts, and Blades in the Dark. In Stonetop, players can choose between 9 archetypes such as the Blessed, the Fox, the Judge, and the Seeker. The village of Stonetop is a character in and of itself, with its own character sheet complete with stats that influence and drive the game. For example, the village's fortunes directly affect what new threats or opportunities each new season brings, and the players must manage the community surplus to avoid disaster when winter comes. The game was funded through a $133,000 Kickstarter and is due out this year after a long wait. It should have been ready in 2021. The interior pages are black and white, although the books do look good on the outside. The backers are a little bit annoyed for the long wait, but we're hoping to see this game finally release in 2025. Terry Pratchett is one of the most beloved writers in fantasy, and Discworld is his best-known series. Renowned for its comic approach to fantasy, often parodying fantasy tropes and clichés, Discworld had 41 novels published, and now there is going to be a role-playing game about it. One of the challenges of doing a Discworld RPG is to capture the silliness, the humor, and the puns of the original without the system getting in the way. You cannot evoke jokes, you cannot magically create humor at your table. At the same time, for this to really feel like Discworld, the game will really need to nail down this aspect. Until now, each Modiphius TTRPG I have tried somehow managed to evoke the feeling of the base material, such as with Dune, Dishonored, or Fallout. I hope this one does too, but the challenges here are higher in my opinion, because it's not easy to induce that kind of silliness at the table that may prove vital in bringing a true Discworld experience to life. Despite what you may think upon hearing that this is a Modiphius game, Discworld won't use the in-house 2d20 system because it was deemed inappropriate to the setting. This is a choice I appreciate, not because I don't like the 2d20 system, quite the opposite, but because it shows that the authors thought this through. The game instead relies on an interesting mix of wordplay and game master hostility, which usually is a big no-no for me, but in this context might actually turn out to be okay and even fun. When you attempt doing something dangerous or with a risk of failure, the GM assigns a dice to the roll, from a d2 to a d12, from a d2 to a d20. Then the players can use the character's trait to convince the GM to give them better dice. So there's this negotiation dynamic woven into the game that can be funny but also derail into metagaming discussions too often if not handled properly. Of course, the fact that the player is encouraged to stretch words to make their threats relevant is what should lead to entertainment at the table. In this game, the players actively try to bribe their GM with jokes and puns to get better dice. Being funny and entertaining gives the players mechanical advantages, and that for sure is one way to ensure to evoke the IP original mood. I've read through the quick start that you can find in the scroll of links down below, and I have to say that the game shows some love and attention. The introductory adventure seems also quite inspired, and both the layout and the art are great. I've read many positive feedbacks on the internet from those who tried the game, and so it's no surprise for me that this game ended 5th on Enward's chart. The Kickstarter was huge, with almost 3 million euros collected from 17,000 bakers. This game is set for a summer release, and I'll be sure to check it out once it will become available for retail. The team who created the award-winning Brindlewood Bay returns with another interesting project this year. The Between is a game about a group of monster hunters in Victorian-era London. Its main inspirations are Penny Dreadful and British horror classics. The game is played with one keeper and up to 4 players. It uses the same mystery system from Brindlewood Bay. The most peculiar aspect of this system is that not even the keeper knows the solution to the case, so emerging narrative and improvisation are key. I really like the layout and the art of the core rulebook, which are very distinctive and clear. There are no wall of text and the colors are vivid and impactful. The project includes 3 hardcover books. The first is The Between, the core rulebook of the game, with everything needed to play. The second is Shadow Society, with more player options, threats and enemies specific to the setting, plus rules for Hargrave House, the Gothic mansions in which the hunters live and work. Finally, Sons of Another World adds 3 new versions of the game, complete with new archetypes, enemies and setting. The Kickstarter raised almost $300,000 from 3,500 backers. The expected release date is set for November 2025, but you know how Kickstarters are. Anyway, if you want to take a look at how this game is shaping up, you can download the preview from the scroll links down below. I personally liked Brindlewood Bay and I am attracted to the setting of The Between, so this project is one I'm going to keep an eye on. If you are looking for something really new from a mechanical point of view, The Broken Empires is a game I would suggest you to consider. This is advertised as a dramatic fantasy sim-light D100 skill-based tabletop role-playing game from the creator of the YouTube channel Me, Myself and I, a great channel which I personally follow. The game system is based on the Blackjack percentile dice system, where you roll high but under your skill. There are no classes in this game, nor levels. A character is defined by skills, talents and goals. Combat is detailed but fast, with a single roll determining if you hit, how hard you hit and even where you hit. Yep, you heard it right. This game has location damage. It also has combat maneuvers, a freeform, slotless magic system when you combine binds and strands to create dangerous weave reaction, and a detailed travel system, designed to make the sandbox experience the game aims at providing a fresh and interesting one. Let me give you one example. When your group is traveling, there will be a guide, a quartermaster and a scout, not unlike what we have already seen with the One Ring 2nd edition. The guide attempts a guide roll that determines the distance traveled before an event is triggered. A quartermaster roll reveals how much fatigue the party suffers before the event, and the scout roll tells you if the event is an opportunity or a danger. So the simple act of exploring the game world is an adventure in and of itself. Overall, this game tends towards the crunchier side of things. You have rules for social intrigue, tolerance and so on. Sim-light is a good way to define this kind of approach. This is a game that aims at simulate realistic interactions and events, but with a light approach so that the focus is on finding the right balance between fast rules and realistic details. This was enough to get me hooked in a market where streamlining has become a widely popular trend. This is easily one of the games I'm personally more excited about for this 2025, and even if it doesn't end up becoming my go-to system, I'm sure it will teach me so many things and spark a lot of new ideas to add in my own games, regardless of whether I'm playing D&D or Dragonbane or any other fantasy system. As a nice bonus, and as we have come to expect this year, The Broken Empires also has a solo mode. The project includes a 250 pages hardcover core rulebook and a starter set, which I really am grateful for. As you may not be aware of if you don't know my Italian YouTube channel, I think box sets should really be the industry standards for tabletop role-playing game, because they pack so much value and at often a very convenient price, allowing you to try out new system before committing to the one you had the most fun with. The Broken Empires was funded on Kickstarter with slightly more than $500,000, and its estimated release is October 2025. There's no quick start yet, and that's a shame because I really wanted to try out this game. But I will be waiting for it, and I really hope it turns out to be as innovative as I think it has the potential to be. The Expanse is the tabletop role-playing game based on James S.A. Corey's science fiction novels. It released in 2019. This summer we get to play a new and revised edition from the guys at Green Ronin Publishing, focusing on the 30-year span between the novels Babylon's Ashes and Persepolis Ring. The system is Green Ronin's in-house adventure game engine. I remember playing the Dragon Age TTRPG with it, but it was used in a variety of games, from Cthulhu Awakens to Blue Rose. The core of the Age engine is a stunt system that allows your characters to pull off dramatic maneuvers to gain advantage or to change situations. If you already have the first edition of the game, here you will find expanded rules and backgrounds, more character options, ships, equipment, backgrounds, adversaries, enhancements, implants, and so on. The new supplements add to this material. The first, Crew Companion, is loaded with options for player characters, and it's basically a player's guide. The second, Daemon's Gambit, is a full-length campaign set in the Transport Union era. The third supplement, Free Navy Conflict, is a setting book, including background and 5 adventures. The project includes the updated core rulebook and 3 new supplements, along with official dice set, a condition deck, and even a character and spaceship miniatures. The Kickstarter was funded with $360,000 by 2,300 bakers, and is due out this summer. The Laundry Files is a series of novels and a tabletop role-playing game already, but Cubicle 7 is bringing us a second edition this year. In this game, players are part of a secret agency within the British government, working to prevent alien gods from wiping out all life on Earth through the use of a distinctive mix of occult knowledge, computer science, and modern technology. Yes, because in this world, magic exists and it turns out to be mathematics. The right calculation can call up entities from other older universes or invoke their powers. The horrible beings characters are going to tackle are a strange mix of X-Files and cosmic horror. Hallett's Red glimpsed them, John Dee summoned them, H.P. Lovecraft wrote about them, and Alan Turing mapped the path from our universe to theirs. As a laundry agent, you're going to fight these things, and hopefully prevent them from wreaking havoc on our world. Within the laundry, there are countless departments filled with hundreds of overworked and underpaid employees, and you are one of them. You might be an accountant, IT support, a driver, or something weirder like a counter-procession exorcist or a computational demonologist, or one of the really hot people who dedicate their life to research and development. The game uses the C7D6 system, focused on versatility, speed, and flexibility. To perform an action, you roll a number of 6-sided dice equal to your attribute score plus any training you have in the relevant field. So, if you have Mind 3 and 2 levels of training in the occult skill, you have a dice pool of 5d6s. Roll the dice, and if any of them exceed the difficulty of the task, you have succeeded. The project includes an operative's handbook, essentially a player's handbook, a supervisor's guide, which is a game master's guide, an introductory adventure called Introduction to Applied Occult Computing, and another book of adventures to dive right into the action. The game was set to release in August 2024, but is not out yet, so this might be the year. The books are currently in review, according to the last Kickstarter update from January the 10th, so there's hope to see it this year. The MCDM RPG is a big project that many have been waiting for, myself included. This is the original game from the team led by the famous YouTuber and writer Matt Colville. The MCDM RPG ranked 4th in N-Word's most anticipated TTRPG chart this year, and there's plenty of reason for that result. We're talking about a $4.6 million project with more than 30,000 bakers, from the same group as Stronghold and Followers and the Illregal Crafts, which you may know from D&D 5th edition. MCDM is designed to allow you to play whatever game or campaign you are actually playing with that system, but in a more fun and direct way, freeing itself from the baroque trappings, the sacred cows from D&D's origins. Although you can use it for dungeon crawling, this is not a game about dungeon crawling. You don't need to keep track of torches or rations or worry about the light going out, and although you can use it for exploration, this game is not a game about exploration. There are no axes and such. The focus is on fighting monsters and tyrants in a cinematic way, allowing you to knock out your opponents into wall, through doors and into each other's. Characters acquire resources as they play, so the more they fight, the more epic the fights become. To attack, you roll 2d6s and add an attribute, and that's it. The damage roll is also the roll to hit. Yes, you heard it right. In this game there is no missing, which means that no one will waste their turns failing an attack or casting a spell whose saving throw is passed. The negotiation system got a complete overhaul as well, with new stats such as patience and interest added to all NPCs you can interact with in this way, and there will be also systems for conducting research and creating items. The game will also have its own custom-designed virtual tabletop, and since the Kickstarter reached the $2 million threshold, there's also gonna be a box set dedicated to Vasloria. Vasloria is MCDM's medieval European analog. It is one region in the larger world of Orden. Vasloria includes several different nations, its own unique story, culture, points of interest, and so on. If you have bought any MCDM products before, or if you have watched The Chain of Acheron or Dusk, or if you've read Matt's novels, you have already been to Vasloria. This book is to include a couple of 128 pages stable-bound softcover booklets. One a high-level overview of the whole region, the other a more detailed look at Hendrim. The box should include several short, from 32 to 64 pages, adventures, each with their own villains for a real sandbox experience, along with lots of handouts that make good and immersive props. This is all in pure Free League style and I really dig it. This is also where this project differentiates itself from its competitors and gains an edge. Artwork and layout are fantastic, at the top of industry standards. The project will include a 400-page core book and a dedicated monster book. The planned release is for June 2025. The playtest has been opened for Patreon supporters of the group, but you can find various opinions and live play on the internet. Honestly, this is one of the tabletop RPGs I'm most looking forward to this year, and I can't wait to be able to try it out and learn more about it. Oh well, I saw that coming. With so many IPs being turned into tabletop role-playing games, it was only a matter of time before we got an official Smurfs RPG. And let me reiterate my complaint that we don't have yet a Wheel of Time RPG or even a Skyrim RPG. But since we're very lucky, 2025 will be the year in which the Smurfs role-playing game release. The Smurfs role-playing game was funded with $134,000 by approximately 1,000 bakers over on Kickstarter. The project is led by Maestro Media. If you always dreamed of playing a tiny blue creatures, going on adventures and solving mysteries and playing a blue gnome in D&D just isn't enough for you, or more likely, if you like the Smurfs and you find the idea of playing as one of them fun, then this is the game for you. It will feature a core rulebook and some accessories, including a deck of cards, some standees, a map, a storyteller screen, some smurfed up dice, and a dice tray. I have to say that the dice tray is among the best I ever seen in a TTRPG crowdfunding, with high and solid walls to keep the dice in. As for the mechanics, in this game the storyteller never rolls, only the Smurfs do, rolling a number of d6s based on the level of difficulty assigned by the storyteller. There's a special die called the Smurf Power Die that you can use to turn your successes into absolutely smurfy successes, whatever that means. But if you fail, your failure will be much more terrible too. When you roll with Smurf Power, you replace one difficulty die with a Smurf Power Die, a d6 with 4 sides marked with a Smurf symbol and 2 sides marked with a Smurf critical symbol. If you get the non-critical symbol and you fail, that is a critical failure. If you get the critical Smurf symbol on your Smurf Power Die and you succeed, that is going to be a critical success. You can use equipment to grant you Smurf bonuses as long as you can explain to the storyteller how you're going to use the specific item for the task at hand. The storyteller can also award some Smurf berries for great role-playing. That's basically D&D inspiration reskinned, but you use it to gain bonuses to your rolls, not to roll twice and keep the best results. If you pay 3 Smurf berries to the storyteller, you can also add back a point of effort to your Smurf. If you're curious about this game, you'll find a quick starter guide in the scroll of links down below. The art and layout of the game are very well curated, so that's a plus for a game that mechanically wise seemed to me very simple. The Smurfs role-playing game will come out this summer for bakers and shortly thereafter for retail. Prepare to board the Titanic in a world where the sea is home to countless Lovecraftian horrors. This is the premise of The Unsinkable: Terrors of the Deep. This game is built on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, but doesn't refrain from innovating certain aspects of it to suit its specific needs. The most notable examples are Sanity as a new ability score, types that replace races, or species as they are now called, for humans, such as Athletic type and Charismatic type, New classes such as soldier, detective, spy, new age-appropriate gear, especially guns, detailed firearm mechanics, new feats appropriate for 20th century, new skills such as heavy machinery operation, explosive handling, disguise and occult knowledge, nationalities as a way to substitute backgrounds, new conditions like hallucinations, paranoia, lost in time and space, and a modern economic system. The core of this project, however, is the campaign, set, as we mentioned, on the Titanic in early 20th century, blending historical events with spine-chilling Lovecraftian horror. Some cool add-ons were included in the 34,000 Kickstarter from the Greek team Yellowbite Studios. The game is set to release in 2025, and as a fan of the mythos, I am eagerly awaiting to take a closer look at it than the free sample in the scroll of link down below allows me. I am a bit skeptical about the use of 5e D&D with anything that has to do with Lovecraftian horror, because I think that Dungeons & Dragons is so focused on super fantasy narrative, but I hope to be proved wrong by a great adventure. King Arthur, the Summer King, has fallen. Britannia is under the iron rule of High King Mordred. You play as a knight loyal to Arthur, survived to his death, as you fight to dethrone the Winter King and restore Avalon to its former glory. Britannia has become an oppressive and treacherous place, and the players, those who remained loyal even in the face of death, are going to fight back in a desperate battle against the reign. In a desperate battle against the Reign of Winter. The Winter King, the role-playing game, uses the Estirpe game system, described by its author as precise, agile but forceful, offering several levels of fun. What does this translate to? There are 7 abilities in the game. 5 of them are general abilities such as strength and deduction. 2 of them are combat abilities, namely fighting and ranged weapons. Your ability determines how many 6-sided dice you roll, usually between 2 and 5. Any result of 5+ is a success. A result of 6 is a double success. Successes above the first offer advantage points that will activate different special outcomes. Risks and the difficulty of the situation can add or subtract dice from your pool. And expertise allows your character to reroll failed dice, representing the character's proficiency in that area. An easy task allows you to add 1 or 2 dice to your roll, while a difficult one could subtract the same amount of dice. For example, Gwendoline tries to convince one of Mordred's guard that she is not the rebel they seek. Her charisma is level 3, so she rolls 3 dice and gets 1, 4, and 5. One success is enough to make the guard leave her alone, although he might remember her face later. The Game Master may determine that since there is an active search for Gwendoline underway, the guard has been given a description of her, making the task more difficult and reducing her charisma roll by 2d6s. Left with just 1 die, she rolls a 3, failure. If Gwendoline has the deception specialty, she can reroll. If she does so and gets a 6, she has achieved 2 successes and the guard will walk away without giving her a second glance. This core mechanics is a mix of elements we have already seen in World of Darkness's game, Modifius's game, even in Arkham Horror dynamic pool system and many others. There will be advantages points, new damage and incapacitation track mechanics, and a magic item system that tries to balance flexibility and determinism. You can learn more about this in the Quick Start Guide, in the scroll of links down below. The game will come into a box containing the core book, complete with a game system, player options, setting information, monsters, and even a ready-to-play starter scenario. Also in the box you will find the Book of Mordred, an 8-chapter dark epic campaign. There's also a starter set if you just want to give this game a try. It includes a shorter rulebook, an adventure named The Green Knight's Lie, some character sheets, official dice, and maps. I am especially intrigued by the game setting and overall vibe, as evoked by the beautiful artwork presented throughout the game's books, so I'll make sure to check out at least the starter set. The crowdfunding on GameFound collected $112,000. The game is set to release later this year, and although the system doesn't seem groundbreakingly new, the product appears to be well thought out and curated, so it's worth keeping tabs on it. We have already talked about the StoryPath Ultra system with 2 games already, At the Gates and Curseborne. Look for the first one of those in the timestamps down here to skip to the part where I explain the basic workings of that system if you're interested in it. Here I'm going to tell you that there is a third Storypath Ultra game coming out this year called The World Below, where you play as adventurers delving ever deeper into the underground, mapping, exploring, building, defending and fighting against the horrific beasts of the depths. The game is fully set underground in the gloom and impenetrable darkness that fill the caverns of the world below. The project only includes one book, full with setting details, player options and enemies. I found the art and the layout for this game below average for tabletop role-playing game standards, but this is a very small project with a $60,000 budget funded on Kickstarter. This game is coming out this year, so if you're interested in its themes and system, be sure to check out the videos the authors made on the game on YouTube. The new Trail of Cthulhu by Pelgrane Press is easily one of the games I've been most waiting for. It's supposed to come out later this year thanks to a £180,000 Kickstarter. Although this project is small, it's one I trust to provide a fun and exciting game. I generally like Pelgrane Press games, such as the first Trail of Cthulhu, Cthulhu Confidential and The King in Yellow, so I have high expectations and hopes for this new iteration of the Trail of Cthulhu. This game is set in the 30s. As in many Lovecraftian-inspired role-playing games, you take on the role of one of the few who know the truth about a world in which prehistory alien gods and monsters world, unleashing cosmic science and inconceivable powers until continents sank and seas boiled. You know this, or part of it, and you are among those who have the unsavory task of keeping the doors to the outside from swinging open by investigating, piecing together clues from books bound in human skin and an inscription carved on walls built before humanity even existed. As its predecessor, Trail of Cthulhu 2nd edition is built around the Gumshoe system, a simple rule engine designed specifically for investigations. Trail of Cthulhu 1st edition was published in 2008. This revised 2nd edition is totally compatible with the first, but incorporates the last 2 decades of play and design experience for the Gumshoe system to make it even easier to run and play. The core idea of Gumshoe is that it's always more interesting for players to get information, operating under the base assumption that the real challenge of a mystery isn't in rolling to spot clues, but in correlating those clues to reveal the terrible truth. Kenneth Haidt is behind the project. A renowned game designer and a Lovecraft scholar, he will have the task to remix the Cthulhu mythos so that they sound, look and play fresh without losing their characteristic aspects. Garrett Ryder Hanrahan, fantasy novelist and RPG adventure creator, will provide tools for building your own mysteries and for exciting improvised play. But what's new with the 2nd edition? Well, first of all, you have easier character creation, with occupations now using simple templates. Each occupation also has a special ability so that each investigator can feel and play a little bit different at the table. Continuing challenges, quick challenges and blind contests have been added to Gumshoe. There's also a better treatment of insanity, with stability breakdown that can now come from violence, terror or the supernatural. The antagonistic meta system for madness has been replaced by the terrible revelation of the mythos. Moreover, the magic system from the 1st edition supplement Rough Magics has been incorporated into the main rules. Characters gain magical abilities after seeking out or awakening their potential, deepening role-playing opportunities. The casting system has been clarified and simplified, with rituals now moving faster unless the group decides to focus the scenario on them. Spells have been reorganized by type, communing with gods now offer potential rewards to the magic or Cthulhu mythos abilities, as well as horrific dangers to your mind and selfhood. There will be more gods and monsters, more GM guidelines and advice, and even 2 new campaign frames. If you're not familiar with the concept, campaign frames are narrative structures to support new campaigns. Here you have 2. Under Unknown Skies, where you play small-town folk from Bishop, Oklahoma, exposed to the outside by the strange technologies by the new Crawford Electrical Company experimental station in the hills. In the pulpier Shadows under Chicago, you can play gangsters or a G-Man facing an Al Capone grown even more dangerous after his initiation into the cult of Yog-Sothoth. Inside the book, you'll find the new introductory adventures, new art and new layout. I still think the graphics of this game are below the standards I've come to expect from tabletop RPGs, but again, this is a small project. The project includes a rulebook, some useful time-appropriate maps, custom dice, a GM screen, the Boundary into Darkness generational campaign frame, and the Kingsbury Aura Adventure Redux for Trail of Cthulhu 2nd edition. You can find a quick start PDF complete with the starter one-shot and pre-generated characters in the scroll of links down below. Let's move to another 2nd edition. Urban Shadows is a tabletop role-playing game of political urban fantasy by Magpie Games. The Kickstarter for this game ended in 2020 and was delayed after the stunning success of the Avatar RPG campaign. 2025 is the year when Urban Shadows finally lands, with the deluxe edition books having been shipped in early January. The game officially debuts on March the 6th. The original Urban Shadows was renowned for its cool explanation of the Powered by the Apocalypse engine and its original take on race and urban communities. The 2nd edition updates game rules, looks and tools with new playbooks, new faction mechanics and the completely revised 1st edition materials. This is a urban fantasy game, meaning that a modern-day city is the setting for most of its stories. The city is a living, breathing character on its own. It hides dark desires, wicked deeds and devious schemes. Its shadowy tendrils are dangerous to mortals and supernaturals alike. Politics play a pivotal role in Urban Shadows' narrative, as do supernatural beings such as vampires and fairies that vie for power with hunters, wizards, and even regular humans. These games' references for inspiration are Constantine, Diableros, the Dresden Files, the John Wick franchise, the Witch Hunter, and so on. In Urban Shadows, you play unique and powerful archetypes, protagonists who are attuned to the supernatural world. While the mortal world remains ignorant of the struggles of the city's supernatural denizens, you are caught in the middle of the physical conflicts and political drama of the city's past, present, and future. You might be a spectre bound to an artifact, unable to move on until you've resolved your trauma. Or you might be a clever vampire who controls the best blood supply in the city, caught up in a war between your kind and those who hunt you. Or you might be a veteran of your city ancient conflicts, someone who got out of the game but keeps getting drawn back in by friends and allies. Urban Shadows is based on the Powered by the Apocalypse system used by tabletop role-playing games such as Apocalypse World, Dungeon World, and many of Magpie's games' own titles, such as Masks: A New Generation, Root the RPG, and Zombie World. The game uses the core framework of that system to provide a simple and effective way to create your own stories of political urban fantasy. You'll create a character using one of several archetypes and then you'll take action, rolling 2 6-sided dice to resolve the outcomes of dangerous and difficult situations. If you know the 1st edition of the game, there will be some minor and major changes to the Urban Shadows you're used to play. Basic moves have been revised along with the playbooks. You will find that the Hunter and Oracle archetypes have been revamped quite a bit. There will be 2 new playbooks, the Sorn, Power, and the Imp, Wild. Factions have become circles and they have a circle status now, to represent their standing. There's a new downtime phase focused on player-facing city moves and rumors and many more new things. If you want to learn more about the game and its deep lore and mechanics, you can take a look at the free quick start available on DriveThruRPG through the scroll of links down below. Art and layout are very good, and the product has a distinctive, high-quality feel to it. If you are attracted to this game's themes, be sure to check this out when it comes out in March. Vagabond is the tabletop role-playing game by Indestructiboy, a content creator and RPG author under the label of Land of the Blind. I follow the channel and its creator has some very interesting takes on role-playing games, and I look forward to see how his own game will fare, and if it will bring us some new things. The Kickstarter was funded with almost $30,000. The game aims to be lean and mean. Simple game mechanics allowing for ease and swiftness of play, especially for the GM, with challenging encounters and situations for the players. This wants to be a modern tabletop role-playing game, moving away from many old tropes. It's a hybrid tabletop role-playing game that blends old-school utility with modern character expression and sensibilities, and under this regard it reminds me of Shadowdark. It's a D20 roll high system with criticals even in skill tests. Armor makes you harder to hurt, not harder to hit, and there's a dedicated luck system with its unique mechanics. Health totals are lower overall for quicker combat with less calculations, resting is meaningful and allows heroes to gain additional benefits, and there's even a load system to ease the burden of inventory tracking without completely ignoring equipment. 16 classes, 21 lineages, and a story-based leveling system where your hero grows as the story progresses that lets you decide where to level up completes the package. I mentioned making the game easier for the Game Master, that in Vagabond you call the Arbiter. The core idea is to let the Arbiter focus on the creative part of their role, while automating all the details that the system can manage on its own. As an example, the Arbiter does not roll for enemies. They are assumed to hit with attacks and evade the hero's offensives. It's up to the players to dodge or to strike precisely. Monsters are automated in a way. There's a sort of AI that easily communicates with their movement, uses of their main and quick actions, and when they may surrender all three, or their morale. These stat blocks are also designed to be used by either a player who gains an ability to control the creature or the Arbiter. You can see something similar in Dragonbane with regards to monster attacks, but Vagabond takes the concept even further, letting the enemies move and even flee without the guiding hand of the Game Master. Another relatively new thing is the group initiative, with each of the players coordinating who goes first between themselves and acting on a shared group turn, something not unlike what you see in Baldur's Gate 3. Other tabletop role-playing games attempted this, but none of them are really mainstream. The combination of all the elements I have mentioned means that an Arbiter could present a combat scenario, sit back, and watch as the players deal with the situation themselves, or, if they so prefer, get involved by controlling directly the enemies if they wish. The game will release in 2025, and you can take a look at the playtest version of the rules by checking the scroll of links down below. I am surely interested in this game, and I hope its mix of clever design choices and old school feeling strikes just the right balance and can bring us a credible alternative for Dungeons & Dragons, and perhaps even the now well-known Shadowdark. With the passing of years, the tendency to make 5e versions of any possible setting has been decreasing but not disappearing. We have already seen some example in this very list, projects such as Born from Ice and The Unsinkable. Victoriana is 5e Dungeons & Dragons in industrial London, but with a mega technological twist. The Victorian Age goes fantasy with the addition of magic and occult themes, while preserving its OG flavor through social class clash and mostly age-accurate technology. Fantastical folk and strange creatures walk the street, wyvern riders patrol the skies, and magic and science coalesce to create otherwise impossible technological advancements. It is a world of steampunk adventures in the etheric smoke of industrial London. This is another project by Cubicle 7, and its Kickstarter gathered approximately $100,000. Players take on the role of irregulars, Londoners who defy the social norms of 1887 and fight for a better life as they steer the course of history towards order or entropy. They could be tracking down the horrors that still lurk in London's darkest shadows, overthrowing greedy bourgeois captains of industry in Bermondsey, or throwing a wrench in the plans of degenerate nobles attempting to summon evil gods in Kensington Gardens. Irregulars protect people from dangerous monsters, insidious secret societies, and world-ending entities. Whether on the side of traditionalist and scientific order, or revolutionary and magical entropy, irregulars will change the world and fight to ensure their side comes out on top. There's little to be said about the system. For its strengths and flaws, this is 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Theoretically, this game should also be compatible with the 2024 version of the game. As it is to be expected from 5e adaptations, however, in Victoriana there are some rule changes and original subsystems. For example, you have enhanced rules for social interactions and investigation, making the two pillars of role-playing and exploration more structured. The project includes a core book with player options, rules and setting, a menagerie with enemies, a collection of adventure called Dreadful Inquiries, and some accessories. Have you ever dreamed of hosting your own public access TV show, investigating the bizarre, supernatural mysteries of your small town? Well, with Weird Heroes of Public Access, you can. In this game, you step into the shoes of quirky public access TV personalities battling monsters, angry moms, and juvenile delinquents to save your beloved town of Fairhaven. The game is powered by a simple D6 pool system to ensure quick and simple gameplay. The core rulebook is surprisingly small for a tabletop role-playing game, but includes the game rules and selections from Tales from Fairhaven, a collection of adventures. The project gathered $30,000 and is coming out this year.
Okay, if you've made it this far and you've been doing the whole journey with me, thank you. I hope this video has broadened your knowledge of tabletop role-playing games as much as it did with me. By looking back at this video, I think there are some takeaways that this video has brought us. For example, it was a surprise to me to see how many games now include solo modes and how many games are full solo experiences. We've seen Astroprisma and we've seen So You've Met a 1,000 Years Old Vampire that are both full solo games, but many important tabletop role-playing game projects this year have solo modes that you can play on your own. That, I think, is a very smart move and a good way to go for our industry. I don't want to say that I don't want to see any more games based on parties, because the social component of a tabletop role-playing game is one of the most important aspects of it. But trust me, there are a lot of people out there that cannot enjoy their favorite hobby just because they don't have anyone to play it with and they don't want to play online, so solo games are a good alternative. Also, I think that solo modes are great ways to get an introduction to a system. I remember playing Alone Against the Flames for Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, and that was a nice and great introduction for me to that system. We also have some new trends in how the physical books for TTRPGs are made, because some of us are collectors and we care about those things. For example, you have curved corners or UV spot pages where you can find the art if you light the page with an UV light. Another trend that I really appreciate, and I for one would like the companies to pursue further, is to make campaign boxed sets. Because, well, you see, I think that when you have a box dedicated to a single campaign or game, you can stuff into that box a lot of materials. You can put in there handouts, cards, maps, dice, and so many things. All things that help you in bringing that adventure to life when you play it. I still think that creating your own adventure is still the best option for most games. However, if you're starting out or if you just don't have the time to create something entirely on your own, having a pre-written campaign can really help you. But where's the difference between what you can do and what developers can do? Well, of course, that's not the customization of the adventure, because you have to know your group better than the developer do when they have to write a campaign for every possible gaming group. However, what they can do is to give you a lot of materials, handouts, and everything else for what they've planned. Things that normally you couldn't do, or it will take you a lot of time to do. So I really appreciate companies creating those campaign box sets. Another trend I was really struck by was the impact of content creator games on the list. As you may have noticed from the stats I presented you earlier and throughout the whole video, some of the most funded games in our list are games created by content creators that bring with them all of their fans and support. Take DC-20 by the Dungeon Coach, for example, or the MCDM role-playing game Draw Steel from Matt Colville. Or you can take The Broken Empires from Me, Myself and I, or Vagabond by Indestructible. This is a good indication of where the market is going, because if you take our millionaires list, the list of games that have been funded with more than $1 million, you will find out that only one game in that list, Dolmenwood, is neither a content creator's game or a licensed product. That tells us something, I think, about what role-playing gamers are interested into. Sometimes they are fascinated by a world, a setting, a game, and they just want to see the tabletop version of it, and they are willing to invest their money for that. This is what the mainstream tells us. However, I think there are a lot of original games in the $500 tier, and that tells us that there is still space for original products, even though they may not receive the same huge support that other games do, especially when they have their fan base. On that note, I would also like to stress that something that I learned that I didn't know about is that most tabletop role-playing games have been made through crowdfunding. I thought that independent publishers were more, and there were many games that were independently produced. But when I found out that even some big companies by the standards of our industry, such as Free League or Modiphius, have been crowdfunding their games, well, I think I saw a trend. Only a few games now are independently produced, and I think it's a good thing that they are still there, because crowdfunding sometimes can be tricky. Another thing I was surprised by is how many fantasy tabletop role-playing games are out there. Of course, I know that the biggest role-playing game ever, Dungeons & Dragons, is a fantasy tabletop role-playing game, and that perhaps the whole genre originated from it. But honestly, I wasn't expecting to see that kind of dominance, especially because there's a saturated part of the market, because you have so many fantasy games out there, and creating a game that does something new in that theme is not really easy. Oh, and the word themes, however, is another one I got wrong for almost all the video. Almost every time I said themes, I meant themes. The last general trend I want to point out here is that of streamlined games, because I think that streamlined mechanics are the general tendency in the industry, although there are some games that I really appreciate that go in the opposite direction and try to give us streamlined rules, okay, but also a good degree of complexity. And here I'm thinking about the Broken Empires or Starfinder 2nd edition. So, how to choose your next role-playing game? I really think that this is one of the best times to be a tabletop role-playing gamer, and that is because we have so many games that give us so many different stories to tell, and they allow us to do that in our own way. For any game out there, there's a bigger chance that you will find exactly what you're looking for, without the need to tweak and customize your own setting. Of course, there's nothing wrong with doing that, with homebrewing every kind of aspect into your own game, but I think that when you have a game that you like, that helps you tell exactly the kind of story you want to tell, with the right kind of mechanics that you want into your game, then your job is gonna be so much easier. That is why I'm so interested in so many games, because they enrich my knowledge, yes, but also help me in being a better GM and player when I play every other game. So I hope this video and list were useful to you. If you want me to do more contents like this, please consider leaving a like to this video and subscribe to my channel. It's been a pleasure to have you along for the ride, and I'll see you in my next video.